Well, howdy, people of the internet. Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today I have a task for my Winraid server. I need to change out some of the storage in it, and I need to try a little task that's been eating at me. I want to see how well this unit will perform re-encoding videos for me. It's just a question I have. I need answers. So that's what the video today is about. So here's my dilemma. I have a 4 terabyte Seagate drive, and I have another 4 terabyte Seagate drive, and then I have a white label 2 terabyte and another white label 2 terabyte drive. Both of these claiming to be 7200 RPM, 6 gigabit per second SATA 2 drives. And what I want to do is put them into this machine. What machine is this? Well, this is our Winraid machine. So we're going to do 2 tasks today on this Winraid machine. I'm going to show you how to add these drives as a new storage pool under drive pool. But first, we need to remove the old drive pool from drive pool. And there's a total of 4 2 terabyte drives in there. And there's an easy way to remove them from the drive pool. We just physically take them out, put these in, and create a new pool. Or we could go through the interface and turn these drives basically off and tell them don't worry about the data on them, get rid of them, and then create a new pool with these 4 drives up here. After we do that, then what I'm going to show you how to do is turn this into a video rendering machine. I mean, after all, we got a Ryzen 5 1600 in here. We've got a GTX 950 in here. It ought to be a fantastic choice for a render farm machine, or a machine to render our videos while we're not using it for anything else. So the first thing we want to do is get the drives removed from the drive bender drive pool so that we can take them out and add these new ones. So let's do that first. So what I want to do is show you what happens when we go into drive bender and we go to remove drives from a drive bender drive pool. We simply just come here. Now there's data already on these drive arrays. So if I go out here to my P drive, we'll see I have a watch folder out there, I have temporary video, etc. Nothing on here is critical. So I could go through the long wait to remove these drives from this drive bender drive pool. And one is I could just click here on one of the drives. As you can see, this is DB4, it's a member of the drive pool. If I click on the minus sign, are you sure you want to remove this drive from the pool? Tell it yes. Now what it's going to do is move all the pieces or all the parts of files that it has on that part of the array off to another drive. And then it'll tell us it's safe to move or take the drive out of the array. Now we need to do that for all 4 drives. Now the problem we may run into is that it's going to need to know where to move the final bit of data to. So you're going to need to plan beforehand. If you're going to remove drives from the array using this method, you need to back up all your data first. Even though it's going to move it around safely for you, when we get to the last disk, as you will see, I believe it's going to ask us where it wants us to move that remaining data. Okay, so it evidently only had one disk or one file on that went with that drive pool. So if we come up here to drive P again, now all that we should notice is that the array size has shrunk down to 6 gig, but you notice all of our files are still there and our folders, right? Okay, let's do that for the next one. So there's a part of a file on that drive. You see how it splits files among drives. And this program also has a tool called a balancer that will move files in the evening between drives to make sure they're equally balances the storage on all the drives. That's one of the features of Drive Bender. Now, the other way to do this is we could have just physically removed the drives, booted up the machine, and then told it get rid of that drive pool and ignore it. But if you want to keep the data, this is the procedure you need to go through. So again, planning, planning, planning. Make sure you have a backup before you get started with this procedure, or you're going to have some troubles. Okay, tell it okay. We'll remove the next drive. And it's got a file on it that needs to be moved. And yes, we're seeing some drive activity. Now keep in mind, the other reason I use Drive Bender is because it doesn't proprietarily format your hard drives. They're still formatted in NTFS or whatever file system you formatted in. It doesn't change the underlying file system. It just creates a database that keeps track of the files in its own like file allocation table. That's a little bit from the old school. FAT. It doesn't store it as a FAT drive. I'm just using that as an example as to how it stores location data so it knows where files are. And that comes in handy if you're mirroring. The beauty of Drive Bender software is you can mirror folders, not just drives. You could mirror drives. You can do that in Windows. But with this program, you can actually mirror directories. So you can say, I only want this part of this drive mirrored and this part of this drive. The rest that you don't care about are data that is easily recreated. Then you don't need to keep a mirror image up. So it allows you to, if you're freaking frugal with your disk space like I am, it allows you to really keep disk space use for what is needed and not for what is not needed, if that makes any sense. And of course, the key to this is backups, backups, and more backups. So it'll remove that last file, and then boom. So now we're down to one 2 terabyte drive in our array. And if we go over to our P drive, we'll see it has shrunk accordingly. And we have all these separate volumes now with really nothing in them, right? So now when we come back to do the last drive, it tells us yes. It says, wait a minute, you can't do that. If you wish to remove this drive, you need to make room in the pool or perform a forced removal. And then it asks us, do you want to perform a forced removal of this drive? So this is your key right here. If it's telling you this, you've got data you haven't backed up. So make sure you back up your data before you do this. So I'm going to do a forced removal. So now I have no Drive Bender drives in here at all. So there you go. So now what I can do is I can physically remove those drives and add these new drives. But first, I need to shut down the machine. So we're going to click on the Windows button, go to the power, and shut her down. All right, so now that I've powered off the machine and removed those drives from my drive pool, I can take them out. Now this is why another reason I use the same carrier over and over again. So if I put one of these in this machine, I can take the drives easily with the same caddy, the same setup, and move them to another machine. So keep that in mind when you're buying these 4x3 drive bay adapters. So I'm just going to pull the lever down and take each drive out. So right now I'm just going to take these out. These are good drives. They're only Seagate desktop drives, but they refuse to fail. So there's another one. And this one. So if you can't afford one of these enterprise level servers, you can certainly afford one of these little boxes here. I think I paid $50-$60 for it a couple of years ago when I bought it. It's a 4U rack. You can put whatever motherboard in there you want. You don't have things like redundant power, but you can, I'm sure, buy a redundant power setup for this case. That'll allow you to put 2 power supplies in there if you makes you sleep better at night. So now I'm going to go ahead and just pop my new drives back in. I'm going to start with this is the top of the drive array, and this is the bottom. So this is drive 0 and this is drive 4. So I'm going to start with my 2 terabyte drives at the end of the array. Really doesn't matter. Each drive has a serial number. Each drive will be detected and tracked by drive pool so that you can easily identify a failing drive. Okay, so these are my two 4 terabytes. So this should give me a total of 4 plus 4 is 8, plus 4 is 12 terabytes of storage, give or take. So I'll have 8 terabytes here plus 4 terabytes here. And then I can pick and choose what I want to have shared. And I can do it by folder. I don't have to do it by the entire drive. So you can see how that's going to save me space. So let's fire it up now. I see the BIOS identified all the drives, and it is booting into Windows. So we should now, once it boots up into Windows, we should be able to go over to the virtual machine. Well, go over to the remote terminal, log in, and set these new drives up in Drive Pool. In Drive Bender. Drive Pool, I should say. Alright, so we're back on the Winraid server. We've rebooted now the drives. Now what I want to do is right-click on the Windows button and come up here to Disk Management, and I want to start new with these drives. So even though they're labeled, I'm going to reformat and relabel them. So I'm going to delete the volume on all of these, being careful not to select my 500 gig SSD drive in there. Okay, and then I'm going to create 4 new volumes. So I'm just going to right click and do a new simple and not assign a drive letter. It's very important. Drive Bender 1. Remember, don't assign a drive letter. Drive Bender 2. Again, no drive letter. This will be Drive Bender number 3. You could label them 0, 1, 2, and 3 for all I care. This really doesn't matter. This is just an identifier to help you keep track of the drives. So whatever works for you, this is what works for me. Okay, so all the drives are created now. So now we should be able to go to Drive Bender. See, delete this pool. Yes. Okay, so now I've deleted the Windows pool. Now I want to use a wizard. Launch Pool Wizard. Create a new one. Let me see if it adds drive P now. Yes, it does. I assume we could have added all the drives at one time, but I'm just adding one drive at a time. Yes. It's not very intuitive. Cancel. I don't see the drive there, do you? I may have done that totally wrong. 10.9. Let's go to Drive Bender now. Okay, now it's seeing the pool. Okay. Alright, so it's mounted. Drive letter P. So let me create a folder called video. Video to convert. These are the files that we're going to convert over from Blu-ray to a format that is custom made for playing on devices like Roku. So we're going to start with Action Adventure, and the first one we're going to do is Guardians of the Galaxy. So we'll copy that one and we'll paste it over here. Now I only have a gigabit NIC in the media, or I'm sorry, in Winraid, the Winraid machine, this machine we're using now called Winraid. And so I'm only going to get 100 megabit per second speed. I'm not going to get upwards of the 300 we get if this unit had a 10 gig networking card in there. Alright, so I've safely copied that file over to the pool. So let's go into Drive Vendor Manager and see how it's regarding that pool. So as you can see here now, it knows I have 26 gig worth of video files in there. So you'll see this pie chart fill up as we start to move data onto here. I'm not going to focus too much on Drive Pool here, other than to show you it is up and running, and now it's showing our smart reporting and our current temperature at all the other lovely stuff we want to see. So the whole reason I built this server was to give those of you that are big fans of Unraid an idea how you could do similar items using Windows as your operating system. And one of the things that I liked about Unraid was that you could put a program on there called Handbrake, and you could create what are called folders that are monitored. And so if you dragged and dropped, say you had a video you ripped from a Blu-ray, and Blu-rays are notoriously large, anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40 gigabytes per movie. But imagine if you could drag that movie file onto your Unraid server into a folder that it monitors, and it could shrink that video down to, maybe 4 or 5 gigabytes as opposed to 20 or 30. And think how many more movies you could have on your Plex Movie Center if you did that. So Space Invader 1 did a video on that. And it's a very detailed video, and he got it to work, and it worked very well. But again, I'm a Windows guy. I like the GUI. So I'm going to see how much of that I can do today without having to do a whole lot of work. All right, so I want to come into Handbrake. Now, I've already created a profile. So what I'm going to do is open a single video file, and that's going to be here in the pool. Guardians of the Galaxy. Now I've already got a preset here, so I'm going to go to the presets, and I'm going to go to custom, and I'm going to do HQ 1080p with subs. So I opened the video first. I'm going to save it in the format of MKV. And there's a reason for that. You have so many better options when you save with an MKV format, and one of those is multiple subtitle tracks, etc. So that's one of the things I use is I use the general HQ 1080p 30 surround as my starter for this, and then I modify it. I leave dimensions alone, I leave filters alone. On the video, I changed that to use my NVIDIA NVMe decoder, or NVIDIA encoder, instead of the software one. I keep the frame rate at 30. So by choosing this format, it gets both of the stereo English DTS channels and converts them properly. What it doesn't do is get the subtitles. So you'll get your foreign audio scan, leave that set to default, and do add a track and just choose English PGS. Okay? And it'll put chapter markers in there where they belong. So the other thing to do is choose where you're going to save this at. So I'm going to save it under, I'm going to click on Browse. I'm going to go back to the P drive, and I'm going to create a new folder called Converted Video. And it'll keep it. It'll keep the same name. Okay, when I'm all done, let me go ahead and bring up Task Manager here, so you can see what kind of impact that's going to have on the system. And then click on Start Encode, and it should work just fine. The first thing it's going to do is a subtitle scan, and then after it does the subtitle scan, it'll actually start to convert the video. So what you could do is you could create a queue of videos. You could grab 8 or 9 or 10 videos that you want to convert, put them all into one location, add them to a queue up here, and then click on Start once you have your queue filled with all the files you want to convert. Then click on Start Encode and go find something to do for the next few hours and just let this run. And what this will do is this will down convert your videos from high def Blu-ray into a format that Roku's and Apple TVs and NVIDIA Shields can use without having to transcode them back on the Plex server or the MB server. Now you can also do the same thing under Plex and MB, and it's a whole lot easier. And I'll show you in an upcoming Plex and MB video. It does basically the same thing without having to use another server to do it. But here we had this server sitting around doing nothing, this AMD Ryzen 5, and regardless of what this says, it is a Ryzen 5 1600, not a 2600 6-core processor. So we'll let this run. I think it takes about, on this machine, 15-20 minutes to convert a high-def video into a lower into one that's compressed. So we shall see. And this is why you have this high-end equipment around like this. But I want to see if it's actually going to use the NVIDIA card, the GeForce GTX, how much it's going to tax that as opposed to the CPUs and RAM for that matter. So now we're actually encoding the video with the NVIDIA encoder, and as you can see, not only is it using the NVIDIA card, it's using CPU. It's got it pegged up there right around 99%, and it's only using about 40% of the GPU. So if we come down here to the GPU, you'll see it's using about 200 meg of 2 gig. It's using the video card mainly for encoding, and it tells us this 2.5 hour long movie will be done in about 15 minutes and 18 seconds. So don't forget, even though you have a decent video card to do your video encoding, it's still pretty processor intensive to use Handbrake on this system. It's putting it through its paces, so we'll come back in about 15 minutes and see how it did. So yeah, there you go. Okay, it's not exactly like if it was running on Unraid. I mean, Unraid does have the benefit of having that monitored folder that will just encode your videos automatically. Now, there is such a thing for Windows as well, but the program has been out of development. I don't think anybody's touched it in a year or two, maybe even longer. And I didn't want to futz with a program that may or may not work. So a workaround of that is just to dump your videos into a queue if you want to, and then let Handbrake re-encode them. Now I'm of the mindset I have plenty of hard drive space. I mean, hard drives are cheap. SSDs are even coming down in price quite drastically. So I don't feel the need to put my videos through Handbrake anymore. And it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to convert a high-def video from high-def, from its native format down to the compressed format. But like I say, if your drive space is at a premium, this may be something you want to do. So even though it doesn't have the folder monitoring built into it like Unraid does, there is a workaround for that, and that is you can just queue a bunch of videos up at one time. And besides, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of hands-on when it comes to converting my videos. I want to make sure my videos are being, because it takes such a long time, I want to make sure they're being put in the right format. So I'll keep my eye out for a folder monitoring program. And if any of you out there have a suggestion how to overcome that and set up a monitored folder for Handbrake or more knowledgeable, please leave your comments down in the comments section and let us know. And then I can share that with everybody. All right, so let's look at Winraid, the server again. So let's go down here to the File Explorer. And you'll see I've got my drive mappings mapped to my media over on Rivendell, which is my 918 Synology disk station, my DS918 Plus. I've got Unky Joe's Playhouse, which is also over on Rivendell. And then I have applications mapped. And then here's my 10, almost 11 terabytes of free drive space. And I've got a couple of folders in there. What I'm going to do real quick is just create a new folder. And I'm going to call it Archive. Alright, so I've got that folder in there now called Archive. Now I like to use a program, I'm old school, I'd like to use a program called Total Commander from back in the day. And now I have some very specific requirements. I'm very picky about my files. This is one of the reasons I use Windows over Linux is for the File Explorer, for that very simple reason. And one of the things that's a pet peeve of mine is I want to make sure I keep the original date that a file was created or copied. And a lot of times if you don't think ahead and you go to copy data or archive it, you can lose that date and time stamp. So one of the nice things about Windows Command or Total Commander, if you come under configuration and options and go down to copy, you can also copy the date and time of directories. So I make sure that I set that on there whenever I use it. And then, so say for example, let's bring up the archive folder over here, and say that I want to come here under my media, and I want to grab my music and family photos, and I want an archival copy of them over on this server. So just drag them, drop them. You'll see it goes out and it counts, tells you how many files it has to do, and then it actually starts the copy, and it'll give you an idea of the throughput here in a second. So that's the beauty of having one of these servers set up like this with additional storage, is that you can put some cold storage files on there. Now I'm going to let these files copy, and then I'm going to go out under Drive Bender and I'm going to show you another little trick that you have under Drive Bender, which is one of the reasons I use it instead of doing an entire drive mirror or a RAID array. I just think this is a better way to keep your data and to save on storage space. Alright, so as you can see, we've got music and videos, or I'm sorry, music and photos now copied over to our drive pool. So let's go ahead and close this, and let's open Drive Bender Manager. And this is one of the reasons I really like Drive Bender. So right here you have the 4 drives that are in that Drive Bender array. And if I want to duplicate, normally I would have to put it in an RAID 1 array, and everything on one drive would be duplicated to the other. The beauty of Drive Bender is that you can do a folder by folder duplication. So it keeps a copy of both the file on 2 different drives, so that you in essence have a mirrored drive. So all I have to do here is click on duplication, and what I do is drill down to the folder that I want to duplicate, for example, music. And all I have to do over here is enable duplication on the selected folder and all child folders. Tell it yes, and boom, it'll start duplicating those files. Same way with photos. I want to do the selected folder and all child folders, click on yes, and it will start the duplication process. And then that runs in the background. I don't have to think about it. As you can see, it's reading and writing from 2 different drives, so it's going out and putting data out there, spreading it around amongst the 4 different drives in the drive pool, so that I always have a mirrored copy of that data. So no matter what happens to one drive, if it fails, I'll have a backup of that data onto another drive. And the other beautiful thing about that is I can do it a folder by folder instead of drive by drive basis. So there you go. We've started putting Winraid to work, and I'm very happy with the results. To shrink those videos down takes a lot less time than it did, hell, even a couple of years ago. I've found a good use for that GTX 950 video card that's in there. And if I do need to shrink a video down for whatever reason, I can put it on that machine and free up my main machine. I didn't get the folder monitoring, but we'll revisit that. If you saw when I was copying data for archival storage, you saw the Handbrake watch folder program on there. But I haven't gotten it to work, but we'll see what happens. I don't know if the software is still in development, but it's a moot point. And now I also have it set up for archival, for cold storage archival, and I've shown you how to mirror those directories that you've backed up to it. I could set up an automatic backup, like Cobian Backup is a free one that comes to mind. It's a very good backup program. But I prefer to drag and drop using Total Commander and telling it to overwrite the older files if I need to. I just find it's an easier way. I've done it for years that way, but your mileage might vary. But we've got the unit in the rack now, and it is serving a purpose, and we can turn on, turn off as we need it. And I made good use out of that old Ryzen 5 1600 CPU, so it's a win-win for me. Now we'll keep building on this server. In other words, I'll keep finding new tasks for this server to do. As I research Unraid, I'll try to simulate those tasks on my Winraid server to show you what can be done with Windows as opposed to Unraid. Because I know a lot of you are, not handy with Linux, but you are handy with Windows. So I want to give people an alternative. That's what this whole kind of series of videos is all about. So there you go. We hope you found the video entertaining and informative. As always, please give us a thumbs up down below if you liked it. Leave your comments in the comments section. Donate if you're so inclined. We take PayPal, Patreon, and you can use the YouTube join function for $2 a month automatically recurring membership fee. So again, we hope you found the video entertaining and informative. Come back and see us again, and please don't forget that we'll see you on the other side.